Is Sam Dickinson more likely to go in the top 5 or fall outside of the top 10? I'll answer that on today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a quick reminder to everyone watching on YouTube to hit that like button. Go and comment down below as well as to your thoughts on Sam Dickinson, whether you think he's more likely to go in the top 5 or fall outside of the top 10. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. You're not going to want to miss out on all the fun Blackhawks-related conversations I'm going to be diving into here throughout the course of the summer. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Make sure to go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. To kick things off on the show here today, yep, you guessed it, time to get into another 2024 NHL Draft Profile. I believe this is actually the 10th one that I'm doing here on the show, but still got a handful of guys still to go through as we're now just about a month away from the 2024 NHL Draft. And as a reminder, I've already covered most of the notable at this point in time. Ivan Demidov, Artem Levshinov, Caden Lindstrom, Cole Iserman, Berkeley Catton most recently, Zane Parekh as well. If you didn't check those out already, make sure to go and do so. You can easily find them under the 2024 NHL Draft playlist on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. And again, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Today, though, the man I'm going to be getting into is none other than big left-handed defenseman Sam Dickinson, 6'3", 200 pounds, and still only 17 years old. He's not going to be turning 18 until a little over a week on June 7th. So one of the younger players in this year's draft class, and coming off of a big-time season for the London Knights, a huge step in his development as he tallied 70 points in 68 regular season games, 18 goals and 52 assists. That was good for fourth among all OHL defensemen in this year, not just draft-eligible defensemen, no, all of the defensemen in the OHL, and also chipped in for a nice 13 points, 4 goals, and 9 assists in 18 playoff games to help the London Knights win the OHL championship. They're one of the better programs, better teams in the OHL, a really well-run and well-coached team over there. They were in the midst of a long postseason run last year as well, and I think that actually is kind of what maybe led to a turning of the tides for Sam. Not a turning of the tides, because a lot of people expected him to take a leap, but what really kind of kicked him into gear and let him kind of skyrocket up in his draft year is because he got 18 games of playoff experience as a 16-year-old last year in the OHL playoffs. Think about that. This kid was 16 years old, just getting his license, and he's playing big-time hockey in the O. And we obviously got to see that development, especially in the offensive side of the game here this year, as he bumped up all the way to 70 points, as I referenced. And in the year prior, he had only tallied 23 points in 62 games. So a big-time burst out this year out of Sam Dickinson in his draft-eligible year. As far as the rankings go, really interesting. Ranked 8th by Elite Prospects, 7th by Bob McKenzie, 8th by Craig Budden, and 10th by Tony Ferrari. And you see those first four, and you're like, could this guy fall out of the top 10 here? But then you get to McKeen's Hockey, who has him ranked 2nd, the highest of anyone here. Also ranked 6th by Chris Peters, 4th by Daily Faceoff, 8th by Sportsnet, and 7th by Dobber Prospect. So a little bit all over the place here is Sam Dickinson. Not all that dissimilar from a couple other defensemen in this year's draft class, but that's why I asked the question off the top. Is Sam Dickinson more likely to go in the top 5, like McKeen's Hockey thinks, or like Daily Faceoff thinks potentially, or is he more likely to slide out of the top 10 or maybe even go 9 or 10? Go and let me know your thoughts on that matter in the comment section. But breaking down Sam Dickinson's strengths and weaknesses, I really like his game. It's I think maybe the most simple game out of any of the higher tier defensemen in this year's draft, but he's really well rounded and there's a lot to like. What stood out to me immediately, though, is his skating. He's a really good skater and moves tremendously well for a guy of his size. And he also uses that in, I think, a very translatable manner to the next level because he's very effective in transition and he likes to be someone who jumps in on the rush. And I would even go as far to call him as an aggressive player in almost all facets of his game. But he uses his speed and his skating abilities, pretty swift technique to get up and down the ice in a hurry. And he actually reminds me, in terms of like the rover style that he likes to play, kind of reminds me a little bit of Kevin Korchinski when he was coming out of the WHL and the Blackhawks took him 7th overall. Someone who likes to, be aggressive, jump up into plays when he sees fit, but still has that skating ability to get back on the defensive side of things and not leave his other D partner back there all alone on an island. Obviously, Sam Dickinson is a little bit bigger than Kevin Korchinski, so maybe that's even more impressive that he's able to skate at that level. Not maybe his top end speed fast as Korchinski, but a really good skater all around. But as I mentioned, I would call his aggressiveness a strength of his. I referenced, he's really aggressive and jumping up into plays on the rush and carrying the puck up in transition. He's really trying to turn defense into offense back there, but he also uses it in all facets of the game. I think he's really an aggressive defender too. He enforces himself on puck carriers really fast, and you'll see him a lot of times have no problem engaging in physical hits and stuff like that. He's really aggressive and on pucks in a hurry. And also, like I said, he's aggressive with the way he can throw his body around. He's strong in front of his own net, strong along the boards, and is capable of laying you out and hitting you with a big time hit. Kid that's already 6'3", 200 pounds at 17 years of age. He's got the size and he's not afraid to use it, which I absolutely love to see. And all in all, I think he probably is the most mature, the most ready for that next level on the defensive side of things. His gap control is the best I've seen out of any defenseman in this year's draft class. He's also really good at breaking up zone entries and knocking pucks away from guys who are trying to enter the offensive zone with some speed. And like I said, he also complements that by using his body and has a pretty active stick. He breaks up plays pretty efficiently. So I like his defensive game. I think he projects to be a pretty safe defensive defenseman in this league. And he also, on the offensive side of things, has a really nice booming slap shot. Probably, again, I think the most translatable shot out of anyone in this draft class. And I know Zane Parekh scored 33 goals this year, but kind of the way I saw him score a lot of his goals, and maybe I'm wrong about this. I'm very okay with that being the case. I'm not acting like I'm an excellent or the best scout in the world or anything, but I feel like Zane Parekh scored a lot of his goals by pinching down at the blue line. Like he was releasing a lot of shots from below the top of the circles, and you just don't get that much time and space and open ice at the NHL level. And Sam Dickinson definitely has the stronger shot than Zane Parekh. Parekh has that pinpoint accuracy. Sam Dickinson can blow it by you, and he's got that good one-timer from the point. So I think that's probably his best offensive attribute. But like I said, really well-rounded. He's got good size. He's got a good skating ability. You can trust him on the defensive side of things for the most part. And for being one of the younger players in this draft class, I think that's even more impressive how reliable he already is, in my opinion. Getting into some of the weaknesses for Sam Dickinson, though, I think the first kind of weakness is I'm not sure if he's ever going to be like a true top pairing defenseman, or I just don't know if he necessarily has that upside because of the lack of playmaking. He's a good passer, but he's not a great passer. He's not someone who's, at least I see, running a power play at the next level. Like he's not making insane dishes. He's got a good stretch pass, but outside of his shot, there's really not that much to me in his offensive game that kind of leaves me with that wow factor. So that's kind of one thing that I think is a little bit of a knock on him. I also believe he could definitely use some work on his puck control. From time to time, he can allow defenders to knock it off his stick a little bit too easily. And he's not really deking opposing players out when he is the one carrying the puck up the ice. The way that he's able to avoid checks and avoid oncoming defenders is just mostly with his skating and his good technique there. He's just able to kind of swerve through guys, but it's not really ever dancing through them. And sometimes he can kind of cough the puck up a little bit too easily, particularly because he does have such good size in the OHL. I'd like to see him get a little bit more rugged on the stick and a little bit stronger on his stick to keep the puck there. And he can also get caught being too aggressive on the offensive side of things. There are some times when he jumps up into plays when he absolutely shouldn't. He gets a little bit too aggressive on the offensive side of things, but you hear that a lot with defensemen at this age. So nothing too outside of the ordinary, I guess you could say. And then another thing that kind of, when I watched his highlights and watched some of his tape, I feel like he's someone who compounds errors from time to time. Like he'll make one and then he'll make a couple. Like there were a few sequences where not only did he make one bad turnover, he made a second one, or he just made a bad decision and then made a bad turnover. Compounding errors, I think, is something he has to work on as well. But, getting to the next level, getting better coaches and getting more mature are all things that will certainly help with that part of his game. So as far as a projection here for Sam Dickinson, he's really interesting to me. Feels like a very safe pick. I see him probably as a bona fide second pairing defenseman at the NHL level. I honestly think he probably has the best makeup to go and play in the NHL next year as a defenseman, outside of maybe Artem Levshinov. But I just don't know if there's that true upside. And when I see McKean's Hockey has him second and Daily Faceoff has him fourth, I just don't know if I see him being the most dominant defensive defenseman in the league one day. And I don't know if I see him like being the dominant enough defenseman to take him at number 2. And I don't know if I see the true offensive upside as a left-handed defenseman to be that intrigued to really even take him in the top 5. So I don't know. It's really weird. I do think, he's going to be a solid NHLer. I like his game. He's got a really good complement of skills. It's not just one thing that he's good at. And I do admittedly like him better than both Anton Salayev and Zane Parekh. I really do. I think there's more translatable parts of his game, and he already plays like a grown man. But at the same point in time, I referenced in my Zane Parekh and Anton Salayev preview in terms of their projection, I think they could both go ahead of Sam Dickinson because there are intricacies. There are things that are unique about both of them that I think could make teams believe there's a lot of upside there. Salayev at his size, his skating ability, what he did as a 17-year-old in the KHL, I think that's going to attract someone in the top 10. And then Zane Parekh scoring 33 goals this year, the way that he can shoot the puck and skate and has that good puck control. I think someone's probably going to take a chance on him in the top 10, maybe even in the top 7 as well. And I just don't know if I see that same kind of uniqueness about Sam Dickinson. I think he's going to be a really good defenseman. I just don't know if there's the upside for him to go in the top 5. So I think he might be more likely to fall out of the top 10 than go in the top 5. But ultimately, I think he's probably going to be picked somewhere between numbers 8 and number 10. In terms of a long-term fit for the Blackhawks, throwing out a hypothetical here, obviously it's a little bit of a long shot that Sam Dickinson is going to be a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. I feel like, again, because just number 2 is way too early, and I don't see him falling far enough for the Blackhawks to go and make a move potentially, because there is a lot to like about his game as well. It would give the Blackhawks, I think, great size and skating on the left-hand side, and we know Kyle Davidson loves that. It would fit into the mold of what they want on their blue line pretty naturally. But like I said, the Blackhawks already have a lot of left-handed defensemen in the system. I think number 2 is too early for them to take him, and I just don't see him falling far enough. But if he happens to fall to like number 13 and number 14, I do think he's a solid enough player that, the Blackhawks have a lot of left-handed D in their system. But if he falls that far, I think it's worthy enough to go up and make a trade to get someone like him. You'll deal with the left-handed defenseman issues later on down the road, because I think Sam Dickinson is going to be a really good player. Do I think he has top pairing upside? I don't know about that, but I do think he's going to wind up being a top 10 pick in this year's draft. All right, there is Sam Dickinson's 2024 NHL Draft Profile coming up in just a moment here, Hawks fans. I'm going to talk about 2023 second-round pick Martin Misiak inking his entry-level contract. But first, I got to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to be worrying when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend. And I'm here happy to announce that Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the slower and closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time helps take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally have used Game Time for probably close to 10 years now when I was going to watch the Blackhawks during their heyday in high school, or even going down to see the Cubs play at Wrigley Field. And I was actually just down at Wrigley a couple of weeks ago. I used Game Time to purchase my tickets along with my buddy. I also love how they show seats, or they show views of your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what you're purchasing and exactly what to expect before you arrive. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now, and when you do, make sure to use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you create an account, and that way you can get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. Yes, you heard me right. You can get $20 off to go see the Cubbies play all summer long. All you got to do, download Game Time, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time. Segment 2, a couple of signings were made by the Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday. One of them I'm going to be waiting to get into until tomorrow's episode, but the one I'm getting into here today was 2023 second-round pick, the 55th overall selection in last year's draft, Martin Misiak, officially signing his 3-year entry-level contract with the Chicago Blackhawks, joining Connor Bedard and Nick Lardis as the 3 members of the 2023 class that are now officially signed on to the Blackhawks organization. Oliver Moore obviously is still in college, so he can't sign his ELC. Roman Kantsarov is over in Russia. Adam Guyan isn't even going to be a freshman in college until this upcoming fall, so no concerns, no surprises that none of those guys have signed their ELCs up until this point in time. But I do think it is about right for Martin Misiak at this stage. It's, making sense for him to go and get that deal done with his team and ready to take that next step in his career. And we did see him, recently a little bit on the professional scene as he signed a PTO with the Rockford Ice Hogs after his season with the Erie Otters of the OHL came to a close, made his professional debut, only got to play in one game, but good little experience there, got to hang around and practice with the team, get a little bit of a taste of the professional lifestyle, which I think absolutely can never hurt. I do think he's probably going to be going back to Erie. More than likely. Actually, I don't know why I said probably, but that's okay because I think it's the rather steady development for him, and it's natural considering that's how we normally see things go. Guys don't immediately following their draft go to the professional scene right away, but it's been a rather steady development for Martin Misiak. Came over from overseas and played for the Youngstown Phantoms, his first little taste of action in North America. Joined on with them late in the season and in 27 games tallied 17 points, 6 goals, and 11 assists, and then also chipped in for 10 points, 2 goals, and 8 assists in 9 postseason games to help them win the Clark Cup. And then following that, wound up being the first overall selection in the CHL import draft this past year. Played his first season in the OHL with the Erie Otters. Had a pretty good year. Tallied 23 goals, 24 assists in 60 games. Kind of bounced all around the lineup as someone that was following Erie on X and regularly posting their lineups. It felt like Martin Misiak, sometimes he was on the top line, sometimes he was on the third, sometimes he was playing center, sometimes he was playing wing, but getting a lot of good experience in a plethora of different roles, which I never have a real gripe against. But in terms of what I saw out of Misiak this past year, I love to see the goal scoring kind of take an uptick, right? We didn't really see much from him in that department when he was playing in the USHL, where he only had 6 goals in 27 regular season games and then 2 goals in 10 postseason games last year. For him to tally 23 goals in 60 games in that next step up in competition, I thought was really impressive. But what's kind of stood out to me, and unfortunately, you just don't get to see this side of things a whole lot at the junior level because you're limited to highlight clips and social media posts and whatnot. But when I talked to Hadi Kalikesh from Locked On NHL Prospects a handful of months ago, I asked him what he saw about Martin Misiak and if he sees him as an NHL player one day down the road. And if so, what kind of role could he potentially serve as? And he was really high on Martin Misiak's defensive abilities, which again, you just don't really get to see unless you're actually tuning in and night out to the Erie Otters. But to hear that he's, a 6'2", 200-pound center already at 18 years of age and is physical, from what Hadi told me, and already reliable and very engaged, has a really high motor, and someone who has decent skating ability for a player of his size, that has me super intrigued by the different type of upside that Martin Misiak could provide, because you got to look at what the Blackhawks have down the middle. And I don't know if Misiak is truly going to be a center, but based on his defensive abilities, it sounds like that could be the best spot for him. And when the Hawks already have Connor Bedard, Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar in the pipeline, all smaller type of guys who, yes, they're good on the defensive side of things, particularly, well, not really Mr. Connor Bedard, but Oliver Moore is a good defender. Frank Nazar is a good defender as well. But you get someone like Martin Misiak who maybe doesn't possess that true top six upside as we kind of saw this year. I mean, only 24 assists in 60 games, 47 points in 60 games. I mean, it's nothing to bat an eye at. They're pretty solid numbers, but they don't really necessarily scream top six upside. So I think that's good that Martin Misiak has kind of a unique skill set and a unique characteristic. And quite honestly, I think that gives him a better chance of being a potential piece of the puzzle here with the Chicago Blackhawks. So as far as what I would like to see from him, or what I think the next step is for Martin Misiak, as I referenced, I undoubtedly think he's going to be going back to Erie. He's not ready to go to the professional level, but would be nice to see him continue to round out his offensive game a little bit. More so probably the playmaking than the goal scoring. Maybe, again, I don't expect him to ever be the most gifted offensive player, but keep the goal scoring on par, keep going in that direction, keep heading up, and continue to round things out by adding in a little bit more playmaking, but also continue to just get stronger, continue to get better on the defensive side of things. And like I said, if he can shine in those areas, I think that makes him very unique in the Blackhawks pipeline. And I think that's going to make him kind of stand out a little bit more on Kyle Davidson's radar. If he could be someone who could be a potential third line center, or even a fourth line guy, pardon my language, or a reliable shutdown fourth line center. I know you don't really draft guys in the second round to be just that, but make yourself valuable here. You don't just have to be an offensive player, because based on the picks and the prospects the Hawks already have in the system and all the money they're going to be able to spend, I think they're going to have some good offensive pieces here in a couple of years. But what they need are kind of the role guys to round things out. And I think Martin Misiak has the potential to be that. So congrats to Martin for signing his entry-level contract. I don't think we're going to see him at the professional scene early on this upcoming season, but whenever, hopefully a long playoff run along with the Erie Otters, but whenever his season does come to an end, I fully expect to see him back in Rockford, joining on with the Ice Hogs late in the year, and then not looking back, making the full-time leap to the professional scene for the 2025-2026 season. All right, there are my thoughts on the next step for Martin Misiak and him signing his 3-year entry-level contract on Tuesday morning. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I still have to get into a quick recap of the men's IIHF World Championship. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube right now and haven't done so already, do me a huge favor. Please hit that like button, comment down below, subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Thank you very much. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts from Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure right now, go and check out Locked On Sports Today and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 3. I haven't been able to talk about this yet since I've gotten back to Illinois, but the 2024 Men's IIHF World Hockey Championship came to a close on Sunday morning with Czechia taking on Switzerland in the gold medal game. Czechia, of course, the host country here, so a lot of people rooting for them. They had a really big upset in the semifinal, taking down the undefeated Sweden to clinch their berth in the gold medal game, while Switzerland pulled off an upset of their own as well, defeating Canada by a narrow margin of 3-2 in the shootout. That sent them head to head in the gold medal game. For us Blackhawks fans, though, it seemed like, we were going to get Philip Kurashev versus Peter Mrazek if you're looking from afar here, but unfortunately, it didn't really go that way. Philip Kurashev did not have himself a very productive tournament, which was a little bit disappointing because on the international scene, he has represented Switzerland pretty well in his young career. That's not really how it went for him, though, here this time. A couple of healthy scratchings in their most meaningful games. He did draw back in as the 13th forward in this gold medal game, but only wound up playing 5 minutes of action and didn't tally any points. And then for Peter Mrazek, he was goaltending for Czechia, but he only did that once in this tournament because Lucas Dostal was he was the real rock of this team throughout the course of this tournament, standing on his head game in and game out. Peter Mrazek only got 1 game worth of action, so not the gold medal game involving the Blackhawks like we had hoped, but still a pretty remarkable final game here. I didn't watch it live, obviously, but I got to watch the highlights and seeing the Czech crowd and how involved they were in everything, to see them wind up coming away with the gold medal, defeating Switzerland 2-0 in this gold medal game was absolutely awesome. And let me tell you, there were Blackhawk legends galore making plays all over there. David Kampf, by the way, who was outspoken about how meaningful a gold medal would mean to Czechia. He goes and seals it with the empty netter, assisted by fellow Blackhawks legend Dominik Kubalik. You remember him. And another guy you can't forget, Michael Kempny, former Stanley Cup champion with the Washington Capitals, of course, was also part of that Czech team. So Blackhawks legends all over the place. But what a win for Czechia. In their celebration looked awesome. I mean, they were like rock stars out there. And I even saw, forget which player it was, but someone on the Czech team was signing a bra out there. Pasta was living his best life. The boys were certainly having a lot of fun. So congratulations to Czechia winning the 2024 IIHF Men's World Championships. A really awesome scene there. Cool to see all the passion that the Czech fans have for the sport of hockey. Really cool to see. And I'm sure a lot of memories for the guys on that team and the Czech fans that were watching that they're never going to forget for a long, long time. Other thing I wanted to mention about this tournament before I let you all go and enjoy the rest of your days, Connor Bedard, even though he was kind of used as the 13th forward for Canada, and it kind of felt like maybe he wasn't having the most impactful tournament. Well, for a kid who's 18 years old, to finish 24th in the tournament in points, despite not having the largest role down the stretch in this tournament, I still think is rather impressive. 5 goals and 3 assists, 8 points in 10 games for Mr. Connor Bedard. His gold medal dreams, unfortunately, came up short as Canada fell to Switzerland in the semifinals, but a pretty strong showing for Connor. I think all you wanted to see out of him, playing competitive, solid hockey, getting some more experience. You know how much this kid loves the game. He wasn't going to miss out on an opportunity to play for Team Canada. He wants all the game experience that he can get, and we should love that as Blackhawks fans because reps, that's going to continue to help him develop. I know there are probably people out there worried, probably because of the Kirby Dach World Juniors injury from a couple of years ago that scarred us all. But Bedsy had no bucket on in this tournament. He was clearly feeling healthy, clearly feeling good, and had a pretty solid display. Maybe did he go a little shoddy there for a couple of games and not produce like he did at the beginning of the tournament? Yeah, but at the same point in time, he's 18 years old and playing with a lot of good veterans on his squad as well. So for him to put up that type of production, I was happy. 2 thumbs up out of Mr. Connor Bedard at the World Championships. I was going to say the World Juniors for Team Canada. Can't wait to see him back on the ice sometime soon, Blackhawks fans. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, though, before I start rambling. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Even if you're someone who regularly tunes in through an audio platform, please do me a huge favor. Make sure to go and hit that subscribe button. It really does help me in growing the show. And also that way you can get all of the latest episodes as soon as they get uploaded each and every day. Again, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.